Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Vulnerability Hangover. I am your host, Nikki, and I don't have Enzo with me at the moment. I'm actually staying in an Airbnb right now, and he is not here with me, unfortunately, but he's here in spirit. And I got a question for you guys. Have you ever dated a man who seemed a little too close with his mom? Like to the point where you felt like the side chick? This episode is for you. We are going to be talking about dating a man and his mom, the enmeshment epidemic. It's an epidemic, let me tell you that. But before we get into the episode, of course, we have to start off with an affirmation. The affirmation today is going to be, I am powerful, beautiful, and unstoppable. And the drink of the day is water. I have it on the nightstand. Let me grab it. All right, guys, take a sip of water with me or whatever drink you have on the side. Remember to stay hydrated. All right, let's get into it. Although I do not have kids, in my opinion, a healthy relationship between a mother and a son should be they have boundaries with one another. The mom is supportive of him. The mom is supportive of your guys' relationship. And she's a loving, caring, and supportive mom. And of course, you want the guy that you're with to be close with his mom, right? But you don't want to be in a relationship where the mom's a little bit too close with her son. The closeness where it almost feels inappropriate. It feels like his mom is seeing him as a spouse, not as her son. We're talking about enmeshment. If you guys don't know what enmeshment is, it's basically when the lines are blurred in it could be parental, could be sibling, but usually it's used in the terms of the relationship between a mother and her son. And this is what we're going to be talking about, where the boundaries and the lines are blurred. The relationship is inappropriate. There's a lot of negative effects enmeshment can have on a guy. They can lack emotional maturity, independence, mental health. Enmeshment can go even as far as the child feeling so burdened with the information or the things that his mother has confided in him to the point where there are cases where children have turned to drugs. Children have turned to being an abuser and taking their abuse out on their significant other. They're torturing their mother through their significant other. I'm going to tell you guys a couple of situations where I have dealt with dating a man and his mother. There has only been one relationship I have ever been in where the mom was not inappropriate with him. You can tell the damage that it has on them, whether they know it or not. I have only had one significant other come to terms after I had to bring it to his attention that he had a pretty inappropriate relationship with his mother. I'm going to tell you about one of the relationships that I was in where the mom was way too involved with her son. I dated this guy. I really liked his mom at first. She seemed like a very sweet person. She craved closeness with everyone. She seemed to love everyone. But come to find out, she's not really that person. She's actually evil. She puts her son on a pedestal. She has other kids as well, but for some reason, her oldest son is her trophy. They were in business together. They did everything together. Like, she basically breastfed him his entire life. She gave him everything. There was not a single thing that man didn't have because of his mom. She would go as far as giving him money for a down payment, giving him a business, multiple positions to where he can excel in life. I'm going to explain how it affected our relationship. I'm going to go back to me explaining how I really did think his mom was great at the beginning. She always wanted to hang out with us. She praised me all the time. I was like, wow, this feels like she's a second mom, you know? And what I didn't realize is, like, I have a decently close relationship with my mom, but we have boundaries. There's things that we don't talk about. With him and his mom, Nothing was off the table. She knew every single detail about his last relationship. She knew every single detail about everything in his life. He told her everything. And so she obviously knew about me. She knew about me before I even knew about her, because she had already looked me up on Instagram. She had already done her research on me, and she liked me. So I thought. Throughout the relationship, it wasn't bad up until we moved basically around the corner from her. So we built a house because we were getting rid of the place that we were living at, and he wanted to move up closer to his mom, which is like where his business was as well. It was right around the corner from her, which at the time I didn't have a problem with, because I was like, I'm really close with his mom. She's great. But when I tell you, the second that we moved in was when I noticed a change in not only our relationship, but the relationship with her and him, also the relationship with my partner and I. And it was jarring, to be honest. I remember the first couple of nights we moved in, she came over, and at the time I was like drinking and stuff, and so was she. She was a very heavy drinker, and she would talk to me about things. I remember we had just gotten our couch in, and so we were sitting on the couch together, and we were talking about him and and she was like, I really think that you guys are going to get married. I really think that you guys are going to kids together. I've never seen him this happy with someone. In his past relationships have been just terrible. She would a lot of times compare me to them. One of her favorite things to tell me was all of those women that he had in the past were all packaged up, and me, I was them. Everything that they had was me. So I was like a combination of all the girls, which is very insulting in my opinion. No offense to them, but I am my own person, and I'm very different from those women. She would compare me a lot to the relationship he had prior. She would always say how he was so miserable in that relationship, how she would not have sex with him, and that was where I knew there was absolutely no boundaries. She was going to ask me and talk to me about everything. And that night, when we were talking, and she was talking about this other person, she told me, I really hope that you are satisfying my son, because you know that in his last relationship, they weren't having sex. So I really hope you are satisfying him, meaning having sex with him. Why are you saying any of that type of shit? That is so wildly inappropriate. I would never talk to her about her sex life with her husband. I would never talk to her about anyone's sex life, because that kind of topic with a parent is very much off limits. That is when I knew that the relationship was very much inappropriate, and I could not get it out of my head. I'm like, she's calling him all the time and complaining to him, confiding in him, and I knew, because he had told me, that when his parents were going through a divorce, she confided a lot in him, and he said that she had asked him if she should divorce his dad, and he told her yes, and that was the main reason why they got divorced. You should never be confiding that kind of stuff with your child. That needs to be between you, maybe a marriage counselor, a lawyer, and your significant other. You should not be confiding in your son about the possible divorce you are going to have with his father. Completely inappropriate. And he talked to me a lot about how his mom's emotions and all this stuff really contributed to a lot of things for him. He would tell me that he would hate when I would get super emotional, because it would remind him of his mom, because she didn't know how to stabilize herself. I say that with air quotes, because he would always go on a tirade about how women are too emotional. Men are emotional too, and emotions are normal. But he would a lot of times compare the bad things, or what he thought were bad things about me, to his mom. So essentially, when he was angry with me because of something that reminded him of his mom, he would take out his hatred or his disgust for his mother out on me. And that is something that you guys need to know. If a man hates his mother or secretly hates his mother or resents his mother, he will take that out on you. Guaranteed. There's no way out of it, unfortunately. Unless they're going to therapy, unless they have other ways of getting those feelings out. A lot of times, guys don't go to therapy, and unfortunately, you end up in that situation. From that point on, I always felt like I had to have a wall up, and I know that she noticed that too because she voiced that to me. She would always say, I just wish we were a lot closer, and I wish I knew you a little bit more. And I'm like, you are very much close to me, but I'm not going to give you the closeness of talking about my sex life with your son to you, and I'm definitely not going to talk to you about our issues. But she would poke and pry, and I did end up confiding in her about my partner at the time and our disagreements. And I guess part of me was like, she would punish him for that. But that's her son, and he's an adult, and she never did that. And then she would also confide in me about her issues with her husband. So there was no boundaries with anyone. And that's on me too, because I never really established them. And I just decided one day to put a wall up without letting her know. Not that she needed to know, but I never put up firm boundaries, and I never stopped her from talking about these things, asking me about these things, etc. She would constantly talk about my body and how she wanted to have my body and how beautiful I was and how her son was so attractive, how he was sexy, how he was so muscular, he's so smart. This man had the biggest head because of his mother. She was constantly hyping him up. Granted, she did honestly hype up a lot of people, but her son was the golden child. He could do no wrong. I remember she would guilt trip him quite a bit. She would make him feel bad for not wanting to hang out with her so much. There were honestly several days in a row where we would be hanging out with her. It was like we were constantly around her. There was not a single day where she was not around. Maybe I didn't see her face to face every day, but he definitely did because we lived so close. They were in business together, and she would just show up and hang out. And I remember voicing to him, I need space between your mom and you. You need to put up some boundaries and create space. And that became a whole issue because then she realized he is only acting this way and putting up these boundaries because I have said something. Even though he didn't tell her at the time that it was because I raised these concerns, and I talked to him about enmeshment. He did research on that. Apparently he had gone to therapy in the past about it, and he's also had other ex-girlfriends that have brought up the relationship between him and his mom and how it felt weird or inappropriate. But it's very hard for those guys to get out of that type of dynamic. I really only think the only way you can truly get out of it is with therapy, maybe going to therapy with your mom, or no contact. And a lot of times guys just don't want to do that. It really took a toll on our relationship. He would run to his mom with every single decision. He would cancel plans with me because he had to do something with his mom. She would give unsolicited advice and criticize me, and he would never defend me. He would always say, that's between you and my mom. That's between you and my mom. He depended on her financially, emotionally. He compared me at times to his mom, and he expected me to care for him in the same way as his mom. And a lot of times he put her needs above mine, even when it was inappropriate. Like, he just brushed off the fact that she had said to me something about our sex life. He didn't even think twice. It created such a toxic dynamic where I felt like I was an outsider to the relationship and there was no way for us to really focus on one another. Granted, we had other issues in the relationship, but this type of dynamic is super unhealthy and it really limits the man's ability to have stability and a healthy relationship because their relationship with their mother is so blurred. It caused a lot of issues. But that wasn't the only situation that I've had with a partner where he had a really inappropriate relationship with his mother. There's been other ones as well. I had one early on, which was my first situation with having a pretty enmeshed mother, and I didn't know what it was at the time, but now that I'm older and I've witnessed this time and time again, I know what it is. But his mother struggled a lot with mental health issues, and there were a lot of times where he had to, I don't want to say carry the burden because mental health is something to be taken serious, but it was very hard because he had to grow up a little bit too fast and really take care of his mother. And so it definitely affected our relationship because whenever him and I had conflict and he lived with her at the time, because we were young, she would constantly get in between it. She would contact my mom and tattle on me. She would berate me. She would compare me to her and say that he needs to date someone like her. That was one of my first experiences. I've also in recent times had a partner where, again, they're in business together and he relies so heavily on his mom. I never met his mom, but he would talk to her every day. He was in business with her. I mean, that's understandable, but he would always run to his mom and he expected his mom to basically continue to wipe his ass for him. I am not the type of girl to take care of a man. I did that in one of my relationships and I vowed to myself I would never do it again. So in this one, I was like, no, the dynamic's gonna change, baby. I'm not going to coddle him and let him basically be a little kid. I'm gonna hold him accountable and call him out on his bullshit. And he was not used to that type of dynamic because his mom didn't really enforce any type of rules with him and he just expected things. And I think in his past relationships, he expected them to be kind of like his mom and he expected them to take care of him. And so I was the first one that was like, no, you need to grow up and do things for yourself. But you know, he expected that he was going to inherit her properties and so he didn't have to go and buy a house. This guy is in his late 30s. It was absolutely ridiculous. There was another relationship. This is the one that I really recognized enmeshment. I didn't still at the time know what it was, but I just remember like his mom was so inappropriate. And at the time I did smoke weed and I remember being so high one time, being in the kitchen and feeling this like weird energy between him and his mom. I literally had to leave. It was so weird. She never liked me from the jump, just like one of my first boyfriends, but it was worse. She was an alcoholic. I'm not shaming her for that. Again, mental health is something that needs to be taken serious. I'm not saying anything bad, but I do think that contributed to things. There were times where she was so nasty to me and would just say that I'm not good enough. He's spending way too much time with me. She found every single reason to not like me. And he grew up with sisters. He never had brothers. He was surrounded by women. And so one of his older sisters also had a pretty inappropriate relationship with him, and she was just like his mom. And she was not nice to me. And it didn't matter what I did, even if I would go over there and I would hang out with them. She didn't like it because I was taking away from their time with one another. It was his first real relationship and she was not ready for that. Even though he was an adult at the time, she was not ready for him to be in a relationship. And unfortunately, I don't think that she will ever accept that he's going to be in a relationship with someone other than her. She also really relied on him heavy when she was going through her divorce with his dad as well. I never felt like I could ever measure up, and no matter how hard I tried, even if I would sit with her while she sat on the porch and I tried to relate with her, talk with her, tried to get close with her, I did everything that I could to get her to like me, and it didn't work. It didn't matter, because as long as I was dating him, I was terrible. Now, I have had a relationship with a man where his mom has had a very appropriate relationship. One of my first real adult relationships. He was the first guy that I ever lived with. His mom was not super supportive of the fact that we were living together, and I was freshly 18 and he was 19, just because she was more traditional, but she supported it and she was very kind to me. She treated me like I was a daughter to her. We still talk to this day. We still have a great relationship. She never once was inappropriate. She was very classy, someone who was kind of a role model for me. She was very successful. She had her own properties. She got things done when she needed things to get done. And she held him accountable when he was making bad decisions. She supported him at times when he really needed it, but there were times where she was like, you fucked up, dude, and you need to suffer the consequences. Whereas those other guys, their mom would immediately jump to fix the situation and get them out of the situation and coddle them. She did not coddle him. And she had all the resources to do that. She made him be the man that he is. He's very successful. He's very ambitious. He's hardworking. And he's a great guy. And I think it's because he respected his mom so much that he respected me a lot. And he didn't expect me to be anything like his mom at all. He took really good care of me. He was one of the best partners that I've ever had. And I really appreciate him for that. And that was thanks to his mom. She really instilled these amazing values into him, and it reflected in the relationship. Can this be fixed? Can you handle being with enmeshment? In my opinion, I don't think I could ever go through that type of dynamic again, just because I don't like having to prove myself to a mother, and I don't want to feel like I'm in competition with anyone, especially his mother. I want him to have a healthy relationship with his mom and have boundaries. I cannot be with another mama's boy ever again. I've never been able to witness them being able to cut that dynamic off. I genuinely think the only way that you can get them away from that type of relationship with their mom is if they go no contact, but they have to make that decision. You can't force them. And these guys need therapy. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. Everyone could benefit from therapy, but therapy is a great way for them to understand the relationship that they may have with their mother and understand how it may be affecting their romantic relationships and what they can do moving forward, like no contact, or maybe bring the mom in for a therapy session and really understand why and how this dynamic came to be. There are situations where daughters could be enmeshed with their father. I know you guys have probably seen those homecoming photos where the dad's holding up the shotgun next to the boyfriend and the boyfriend's looking all scared. But I've never in my life witnessed that kind of dynamic. I've only witnessed an enmeshed relationship between a son and his mother. One way that you can figure out when it's time to walk away versus if there's hope and change in the relationship is when they're in severe denial and they don't think anything's wrong with the relationship that they have with their mom, or when they're constantly comparing you A man should never be comparing you to any woman. Walk away if he's continuing to stick up for his mom over you, especially if you are married. I don't think there's a lot of hope for change, especially if they don't want to go no contact or they don't want to go to therapy. Like I said, I personally cannot be in a relationship long term with a man who is so incredibly enmeshed with his mother. I've seen it be glamorized almost in pop culture. There's so many TV shows and movies, like Bates Motel was one that very clearly depicted exactly what enmeshment is. So if you feel like you may be with a man who has that type of relationship with his mother, you may need to go to therapy yourself, because it's very fucking hard. As we close out this episode, I'm reflecting back on everything that I said today, and would I ever date another enmeshed man again? Hell no. What are some of the red flags to look for? The mom always feels like she has to compete with you. The mom treating you unfairly. The mom going to her son for every single fucking thing, especially when it comes to her issues. If he does not stick up for you between any disagreement with his mom, and when he does not prioritize you. If you are with someone and you genuinely see them long term, that is your new family. Of course, the parents, the mother in specific, is going to be involved because they're a grandmother, but you start your own family. I genuinely think if you are with someone who has this type of relationship with his mom, he's going to be so preoccupied with her and her needs that he won't be able to let the relationship grow and flourish between you and him. Let me know if you guys have had any situations where you have been with a guy like this. I would love to hear your takes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Vulnerability Hangover podcast. Please make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. And I will catch you guys in the next episode. Okay, love you, bye!